very much for such kind words, and thanks to everyone for really being around to come and listen to me, listen to the capitalist born out of Africa, born out of South Africa. Something quite uncommon because I was born and brought up in that environment where capitalism was something that, in fact, even today, that our people are actually scared to admit. And I've actually taken a conscious decision a few years ago that I've got to really use the balance of my life to actually promote the capitalist system in South Africa and Africa. Because I think it's really quite unfortunate. Obviously, we don't really have the time to obviously really share the complete life. That's the reason why I've taken the liberty to write the book about my life so that people can really get deeper into my life. But fortunate enough, if the old man upstairs looks after me the next 30 or so years, that's really what I'm committed to promote the capitalist system in our continent, firstly. And secondly, actually fight racism. And I'll tell you why I've committed my life to fighting racism as well, because my life nearly turned totally different with the perception and my upbringing. As you can see, this is obviously my birthplace in a small village in Amanskral, which is about 30 km north of Pretoria. You know, brought up by a mother who, unfortunately, she was really very unfortunate, my mother, because her husband, a typical black man, decided to die when I was 2. So left this woman to take care of 5 kids. And this poor woman, the only thing she knew was to look after white kids and clean white homes. That's all my mother knew. But now you can imagine now who must then, if my mother's out there looking after white kids, then who looks after me at the age of 2? And this man decided to die. Fortunate enough, I survived. Here am I actually talking to you today. But then if you really look at this slide, what it says to us as South Africans in particular, and I think, and I strongly believe it applies to most parts of Africa. I grew up, for me, stealing was part and parcel of my life, was my culture, was my value system. We had to steal water to survive because we had no running water. We had to go and steal wood to make fire before we go to school. My mother would come back once a month or so, if we like him, unpacking some of the stuff with my sisters. Actually, as she unpacks, she'll be talking about some of the stuff that she stole from a white employer. I'm listening to this, I'm a 5-6-year-old. So for me, totally, I mean, stealing was totally acceptable because my mother had to steal to survive. I mean, the kind of pittance that she was earning couldn't really afford it to support us. But at the same time, every Sunday, without any fail, I will go to church. So why I'm actually saying and raising this issue, and I'm actually raising it with South Africans, because it's now we're celebrating 20 years of our democracy. And to think that this kind of upbringing, I was not an exception. It was the rule. Majority of us grew up like this. And I think the reason why I'm actually raising this, and I'm raising this even in international platforms, so that for all of us as South Africans today, 20 years in our democracy, our own country, what do we do to stop this culture and value system of stealing and corruption? Very fundamental issue, because it looks and appears to me that majority of us who grew up under this environment, under apartheid, still continues today. Even when we're in government, we're in power. So, and I've always appealed to South Africans, appealed to the churches and psychologists to say, please, we need an immediate intervention because we've got a crisis. Because when we're in power, we don't realize that this is now our country. We're not living under apartheid. Quite exposed to gambling at an early stage of my life, with obviously no mother around, and brought up by sisters, my siblings still at school. And I also needed money. So the only way I could make money was to gamble. I don't know if some of you know how we gambled in the townships. Very dangerous place. And the reason why I opted for gambling instead of actually going to work in the white neighborhoods, do gardens, or go and be a kid in the golf courses, as I was growing up listening to people around me, totally convinced until I was in my early 20s, that I was totally convinced that white people are evil creatures, not human beings. And the reason why I thought white people were evil creatures, because the only thing I've listened to people talking and I've experienced, my encounter with white people was just violence. White people, every time they saw a white person, they would just really create problems for you. And this is things that I've listened to people around talking in my community, and we experienced this. So, and I think for whatever reason, I decided at the very early stage of my life that I need to protect my dignity, because everyone talked around that this apartheid system is out there to really take away our dignity. And I realized I had this feeling in me that I need to really protect this dignity, because the only thing valuable that I've got, because I had no material wealth or capacity, the only thing I had was my dignity. And I decided the only way I can protect is to avoid contact with white people. But then I needed money, so I decided, no, let me gamble. My peers at 14, 15, they'll go into white neighborhoods on a Saturday like this, wake up in the morning. When they come back, they find us waiting for them. We gamble. Within half an hour, poor guys who got up at 4, 5 in the morning, within half an hour, they lose their money. Did I care about them? Absolutely not, because we didn't force anyone to come and gamble. But this is really how I started my gambling career. But then, managed through gambling to actually go to school until I completed my matric in 1978. And actually growing up in a very complex society, stealing part and parcel of our culture and value system. Another problem, challenge that we had as people in our townships, in our areas, while we're having this problem and challenge with apartheid, at least we had one good entertainment. The biggest entertainment which we thought as black boys or growing up in the townships, that we thought the girls were a God-given gift to us boys to enjoy. So, you know, when I turned 15, 16, you wake up in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, there's one part of your body that's up. No parents around to give you guidance that this is part and parcel of human nature. So then you obviously check with your peers, your friends. You say, guys, hey, I've got this problem every morning. You know, there's this. And the boys will say, no, don't worry, we sort it out. They are the God-given gifts. They will sort it out. They'll make this boy to sleep. And that's really how I was born and brought up. As far as girls were concerned, the more girls you had, the better respect you receive from your people around you. So when I went to university, second year of my studies, one morning, 6 o'clock, the university was surrounded by the police, and we were asked to leave. And that became the end of my academic dream. And when they called us back, I decided not to go back, because I really focused my energies on leaving the country, going to Zambia, so that the Russians can give me AK-47, so that I can go back to South Africa and kill all these evil creatures. Unfortunately, I had no contacts to show me around, to really take me out of the country, and ended up actually working. For the first time, these evil creatures that I avoided, now reality dawned on me that I had to face them. And obviously, the first job I worked in as a dispatch clerk, I was now obviously one of those black guys who could read and write, and worked as a dispatch clerk. I worked for this company for 7 months, and that's when now this racism that I avoided really confronted me. But then I decided, you know, I've got to really do something. The second job I tried was with an Indian-owned family business, worked for them for 23 months. That became my longest salaried employment. In the process, all the time trying to leave the country, because, I mean, we had no future in South Africa at that time. It was totally bleak. But then I realized I was running out of time, and I've always been a very proactive, practical person that, you know, you only live once, and I just don't want to really miss time in my life. So I decided I've got to really do something to have to take control of my life. Education is no longer possible. I don't have the Russians to give me AK-47s. So I decided I must go into business, and that's really what I decided to do. But now, business in the New South Africa at the time, for black people, we were not allowed to go into business. But I decided to hell with the system. With or without the legal framework, I'm going to go into business. But then I decided I must stabilize my life, because while we're having all these challenges with apartheid and challenges of racism, you know, as I said, women were our biggest entertainment. But I decided if I must go into business, I needed stability in my life. For the first time in my life, I took a very hard decision that I never thought I would. There's this girl that I met a few years before. She was the first girl that I've ever really had a relationship for more than 6 months. I decided to propose to her that she marries me. I mean, you can imagine, I'm 22, she's 20. And she was so madly in love with me. And she decided to take a chance. And fortunate enough, actually, it really worked for me. I think this is really one decision that I so really treasure in my life. Because this woman has played such a key stabilizing role in my life, and I'm really so proud that being now married to her for over 31 years, with the biggest of friends. But now, how do you go into business in South Africa with the legislation saying as a black man you can't go into business? Decided, you know, I must buy a car and go into becoming a salesman, selling black people insurance. That's really the first job I tried. So I bought my first car, very expensive at the time, very unheard of in our communities for a black person to drive a brand new car. Bought a brand new car at the age of 22. And 2 months later, I resigned, and I started my business career. And obviously, everything else is history. Commission sales rep, selling stuff from the boot of my car, ducking and diving from the police. And in the process, sold hair care products for one company in Johannesburg, also on a commission basis. At the age of 24, took another defining moment of my life. I needed to actually manufacture because I was selling for this company, and I decided, you know, before I become a victim like my father, my mother in the community, because obviously those days in South Africa, black people in terms of employment, totally not protected. You were always at the whim of your white employer to do what they wanted with you. So I decided I'm not going to wait for this guy one day to get rid of me. I was his top salesman selling products on a commission basis for him. Decided I must actually manufacture those products. But I did not really have the technical know-how. Approached white Afrikaner who was working there to actually become my partner. And that's how a company called Black Like Me was born, conceived in 1984 and 1985. We started producing products. There was a loophole in our system. As South Africa at the time, we had what we called homeland systems, where they said as black people, you can go and operate in those barren areas. So I decided to go and operate from there. And the beauty of it is that we were really so successful from the beginning because black women in South Africa wanted to be pammed. And I said, Herman, go and pam them and make money. And that's really what I did. I feel so great every time I look at our beautiful women in our country and continent that have actually been instrumental in really making our nation so beautiful. And then at the same time, they gave me an opportunity to make money. I used to make so much money that I didn't know what was happening, you know. But we operated, as I said, we operated in the dark days of our country's history. As you can see, the police, you can imagine, I lived half of my life under the system. Whereas a black person, I had to carry an ID 24 hours. And carrying this ID with you was almost an impossible task to get it to be legal, to be in a particular area. So all these years, as I was a salesman from the boot of my car, I would be arrested at any point in time because I was not allowed to be doing what I was doing. And obviously sailing, I wasn't just sailing in the black townships in one area, so I had to move around. And every time with a state of emergency, coming across the police was a daily occurrence. And in the process, as you see me now with a suit and a tie, this actually became my life. That actually helped me, protected me from the police. I would always, because I was not employed by a white employer, so my ID always was not legal to be in any particular area. So I turned out every day when I leave home, be in a suit and a tie, just give the police an impression that I'm not a criminal black man. You know? And that really has saved me a lot from this kind of harassment of the system. You know, one thing that I believe we were extremely successful as a company from the beginning, the factors that really made us successful, because I did not really have the money for marketing. In fact, the marketing, I didn't know what was a thing called marketing. One thing I thought I needed to sell, but really chose a very beautiful name, appropriate at the time in South Africa, called Black Like Me. Very evocative name. It's a kind of name that people come across it the first time and you remember it for the rest of your life because it's the kind of name that you always question. So I think fortunate enough really worked for us as a company. And as I said, we instilled a sense of pride in the oppressed South Africans. We really give them a reason to be black and beautiful. And that's really what we promoted. At the same time, I think my white partner played a very key role in really protecting us from the system because the concern we had from the beginning was that this name might obviously attract a wrong political reaction from the government, that they might think that we're another political organization, another communist. So I think my white partner really played a key role. And one thing that I actually learned over a period of time in my business career, as a capitalist, was that I think it's a kind of capitalist system that we developed. I strongly believe, and I've fortunately enough been extremely successful the last 30 years, that as we make money in communities, you show that you look after people who support you. That's a kind of system that I really admire. And I've committed my life for the next few years of my life to ensure that I promote. One thing, I don't want to mislead people. When I'm in a commercial environment, I'm in a commercial environment to make money. I will get involved in social programs, but I can only spend money after I've made it. So I don't obviously want to operate on the basis of misleading people that I'm a social animal. I'm not a social animal. Fortunate enough, I don't owe anyone anything. And at the same time, I make it clear to people that no one owes me anything. So therefore, whatever I will spend, I will do it at my own terms. And that's really what I do. And I've really been a very privileged South African, or a privileged human being, to really be able to use my excess money to spend time in community projects. But as I say, I make it very clear to the recipients of my whatever extra money that I use, that I do it because, you know, it's the right thing for any human being to do. So what has really I've been up to the last few years, as I said earlier on, I've committed my life in the promotion of free markets in our continent. You know, I was born and brought up in a continent which has really had major challenges. And I think the easiest way over the time, if I really look at our political leadership in the entire continent, we want to blame other people. I'm saying it, and I strongly believe that we want to take responsibility for our action. Because one thing for sure, history we're not going to reverse. But the future, we can really decide. We've really gone through a difficult period, through colonialism, through apartheid, but at the end of the day, I'm not prepared to even consider going to wake up Verwoerd. I don't know if you know Verwoerd was one of the architects of apartheid. I'm not going to worry myself about Verwoerd who created apartheid. I'm concerned about the future. And that's really what I'm really fighting and committed my life on doing. And in that process, I strongly believe that as society, as a country, we've got to avoid racism, because extremely privileged the last 30 years of my life that I've worked with South Africans, black, white, Indian, or whoever. I've rarely worked with some of the most wonderful human beings in South Africa and the world. And I really want to try and avoid our kids, can be anywhere in the world, black kids, to fall victims to this perception of really thinking that everybody else on the basis of color that are racist. That is absolutely not really the case. So those are the challenges that I believe I'm really committed in doing. So, and I'm really doing this through using the Free Market Foundation, which is really one fantastic organization I've been financially supporting for over the many years, but I took a decision 2 years ago, hijacked it, and I'm now the chairman of the Free Market Foundation. And in the process, some of my fellow South Africans find it difficult to really understand, because Free Market Foundation for all these years has really been a policy advocacy group. But I've now decided we don't have to just really be a policy advocacy group. What we need to do, we live in a constitutional country. We've got one of the best constitutions in the world. Before it is being destroyed, what we believe to do is actually challenge some of the legislative framework that we don't agree with. And we took a decision 5th of March this year, for the first time, as a black South African, to take in our government to the Constitutional Court on some of the aspects of our legislation, which I believe is totally unconstitutional. Some people say, you're not patriotic, it's an African. I can assure you, if it's an African, then I'm happy not to really be part of that. At the end of the day, for some of us privileged South Africans, we have the responsibility to ensure that our country, coming out of an evil system of apartheid, that we don't have to really then have our own brothers, politicians, oppressing us again. So that I can assure you is not going to happen in my lifetime. And I strongly believe that I've got a lot of other committed South Africans to ensure that we keep democracy alive. It's very important, not important, actually more than important. And it's up to us as civil society to ensure that that happens. And the only way our democracy can flourish and survive, it's going to really depend on us as civil society engaging our politicians. And I urge you, coming from all parts of our continent, to please begin this process. We've just really had lost one of our shining light, Mr. Mandela. And I think the only way we can honor him is to ensure that we continue in making sure that we live in a free society. And not just in South Africa, in the rest of the African continent. And also really feel quite privileged that for the last 16 years, I had an opportunity to serve and be a chairman of one of the greatest NGOs in South Africa, called the Phil Bent Foundation. At the moment, we're reaching just over 5,000 kids. At any point in time, we really give them hope. We can work with kids from real difficult backgrounds, but what we do is make sure that these kids should not regard themselves as victims, that the situation can change, and it can only change if they make it really happen. And so because obviously all the time, I don't really have the time to really share my life with the world, I took a very difficult decision 4 years ago to actually write the book about my life. So I'm one of those stupid human beings that can obviously really make yourself vulnerable. So this is not really a fiction. It's not theory. This is real about my life, how I've lived it up to now. And I'm sure more books will follow in the future. And I was totally surprised late last year, one of the universities in South Africa, realizing that I was a university dropout in 1979 and decided to really do me a favor. And I got a call and a letter that they'll give me an honorary doctorate in business administration. So yeah, so basically that's my life. And thank you very much for listening to me, and really and truly hope that we can really have more and more of Africans honoring the old men that just really left us a few days ago. We've got a huge challenge ahead of us. I was born and I live in a continent where we've always regarded politicians as if they are the best thing that ever happened. And for as long as we continue in that trajectory, we've got big problems. I think we need to really understand as Africans, please let us engage our politicians to know, for them to understand that they're civil servants. We are the bosses, not them. Thank you very much for listening to me.